caption.
Miss Casey, we're on
Lab 6.
lab 6.
Okay, so as sorry, let me click share screen. As we are talking about TCP/IP utility this week, we are going to work on a lab or a lab exercise that's going to go over some of the command that's very useful when you are checking for network state. And even in some cases, you would see it for security, even security checking security status. I know that you probably have learned ARP poisoning or ARP poisoning. This is a good way to kind of understand how to use ARP and also other utility in Windows. So the reason why we're using virtual machine again today is because you need administrator's privilege and you don't have that with the regular login on your computer. So this is why you need to make sure that you use your virtual machine. So before we start our VM, and some of you already started your VM, let's talk a little bit about ARP. I know that this is covered in a lecture, but kind of wanted to tie back into what we're doing and what we're looking at today. So what you have is address resolution protocol. This is used to make sure that you are using a specific IP address that's tied to the physical address. It's very much like how you have a legal name and you would also go by a nickname in your household. So we need to make sure that we tie those identification for the system together. It needs to make sure that it ties the IP address, which is recognized in the network overall, right, mostly by the routers. You're gonna need a drive from the chair there. And tying it back to the MAC address, which is the physical address of the system. So this is why ARP is very important, because it's gonna tie back to where that system exactly is inside the network. Right? We talked about the IP with the subnet, get it to that portion of the network. But now the switch is going to use the table to refer to that particular system based on the physical address, which is your MAC, media access controller address. So this is a way that we would be able to really identify the system. So there are different types of ARP. You have the proxy ARP. This is a way that we can set up how ARP can be responded with a certain IP address that's not in that network. So if it's looking for a specific address that's not in that segment of the network, right, it's going to use the proxy ARP to be able to identify or respond to the traffic and offers a certain type of MAC address for the destination. And then in the next section, you would see the gratuitous ARP. This is for a way that the host would simply announce update. So it's you're gonna see some broadcast from IP to MAC address. So we want to look out for that, right? When it broadcasts, it just sends to everybody. Hello. And then we always want to have a way that we can also reverse. This is a way that if a system doesn't know its own IP address, like if I go around and not knowing my own name, right? It needs to be able to have a way to self-discover or identify that, okay? Because not all systems are assigned IP address right away. So in some cases, you might need to use reverse ARP. And then you have inverse, which is where it needs to find a MAC address using the IP address, okay? So I put some information about ARP here. ARP is very important. It's always good to really understand it so that way we can see why they do ARP poison, which is a way that they would modify the record or the table that stores the IP that's correlated with the MAC address. So to load your virtual machine, you are going to plug in your drive. Let me get to my drive here. And you might use the Western Digital, right? But I like to open up VirtualBox. So to start, we are gonna go ahead and look for VirtualBox. So we are gonna type in VirtualBox, right? And open up the app. This is a better way to load the virtual machine instead of double clicking the blue file. Sometimes that fails. And you are gonna click the add button in the app. And if this pops up, just close the prompt. Then you're gonna navigate to your drive here. And we're gonna find the CIS40A VM. Open that up. And you can use either or, the Windows 10 VM or the clone. So you can open this up and open this up, okay? So I'm using the Windows 10 VM clone, and that's located inside the CIS40A VM folder. And click open. If you see anything that says aborted or fail here, that means that it's not loading your virtual machine. You have to right click and do remove only. If you do remove everything, you're going to delete all my files and you will not have a virtual machine to use. So if you guys grab the Chinese drive, make sure that you reboot your system before you log in. If you need a drive because your Chinese drive doesn't work, come up and see me. Then we're going to click start. Okay. So I'm using the clone and the clone is fine. You can also use the regular Windows 10 VM. If the message pop up, you can close it and then we can click the blue X to close the sidebar. It's just saying that it will capture your cursor and for your mouse and also the cursor for your keyboard. So once this gets loaded, so I added these steps because when I tested it with the regular system, I don't have admin privilege. So you will need some of that in order to delete your ARP record on the table as an admin. Okay, so we want to be able to use these utility at the highest level as a user for some of the command. Okay. Any question regarding VM loading? Okay. Yeah, so take this one and then open up the 40 VM folder and then only drag the Windows 10 clone to your desktop. That way you don't, yeah, and then you can free that up for someone else to use. Same thing. So take this, open up the CIS40A VM folder. There's a Windows 10 folder in there. You can drag it to your desktop. You can use it right there. Yeah, so log in just like before.
It says right under what it does. No, there are just the two. Yeah, so it says it flashes it. So flashing, it's not gonna show anything. You're gonna have to do the next command, which I think is that G.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then
It's repairing.
how it's different, and then the answer, yeah, it's different.
You might want to shut that down
Oh, I see. And then it's
and then use the other one. Is that the clone?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just exit and then you want to see if you can use the other one. Question?
And then space.
Okay.
And
Yeah, it's on your instruction for your lab.
Is it the?
It's right here.
On there.
40A, just like what you did before. CIS40A with exclamation point is your password. So mine is loading the desktop. Once you have your desktop loaded, you are going to log in as the user account. Okay. And then we'll be able to run the command. So here's my desktop. I want to click in it. And if it doesn't respond, you can also choose, sorry, there's a mosquito. Input, and then you can use your Control Alt Delete. So click in it, and your password is going to be this. CIS40A with the exclamation point. Okay, any question? Okay, so once I logged in, I'm gonna move this down a little bit so we can see. I'm gonna go ahead and open up command prompt and be able to use command prompt as an admin. So make sure that you run as administrator, otherwise you're going to not be able to delete your cache. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and in my virtual machine, I'm gonna type in CMD for command prompt. Okay, make sure that it's in your VM, not the outside machine, the host machine. So we can type in CMD, and on the right side, you should see run as administrator. You're gonna click that. And it's gonna prompt you, are you sure? You're gonna say yes. Okay, so I'm gonna change the font size a little bit so that way we can see better. Okay, so we're gonna, once we run as administrator, you would see the path. It should say Windows System 32. If you are on this command prompt and if you see CIS40A student, you're not running as administrator. Okay, so make sure that you pay attention to your root path. So we are gonna be running as administrator. So next we're gonna do an ARP-A. So let me get out of cap. ARP --A. This is gonna give you all. A is for all. And if you're not sure, you can also do ARP-help, right? And it's gonna give you some of the common option. So once you type that, you press enter, it's gonna give you what we see as a table. Whenever that you look at this, you are going to be able to see when it's showing all the F's, right? For your MAC address, that's usually what you see here. We often see that as a broadcast. And when you look at the IP, right, 255, we don't use that as an assignment for IP. We talked about that last time, right? So this is a static, right? And the difference between dynamic and static is dynamic that it automatically assigned and updated, where static is we can manual and put it in. So whenever that my system established a connection with a server, why are we not able to, hold on one second. Let me pause my recording real quick. All right, so we talked about ARP-A. Next part, we're gonna do an ARP-D. This is gonna delete the cache. So if you need to clear out what's in the table of that system, yeah, this one you need to reboot your computer before you restart.
Yeah, we did that. It's not making sense.
Okay, so let's work with someone right now, okay? No, you have to type exactly like the instruction. ARP-A, right, like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
You are
Space -A and press enter. So next I'm gonna delete my cache. So all of this is stored into RAM and we want to flush that out. So we're gonna do an ARP-D. And when you do this, it's not gonna have any pop-up. That means it's not going to show you any text that is executed. It's just going to clear out the RAM cache. So you're just going to get the next pop-up line. That means that it's done. If you're getting an error, that means that it's not taking the parameter or the switch that you put in here, right? So you can look at the help option. So ARP-D, I put down the information for you, is that it's going to clear out the cache entry. And so we're gonna try again with the -G. So there are different ways that we can also obtain the information or display the information. And whenever that you see the dash, it has to be the option that comes with the command. So you're using a switch or an option G to display. So what we see is after we delete, you have less entry listed. It's only showing, right? It clears out all the extra entry that you see previously from the -A. And A is a little bit more, and it's gonna encompass a lot more details compared to what you would see in the other option. So the question asks you, right, is the output the same as number 3? Of course not, because we had deleted some of the unnecessary entry and we had only be able to display, right? So what is really given to me here is that you have the internet address. This is mine, right? And this is the connectivity that I have currently in the system. It had flushed out some of the other ones. So even if you no longer access that web server or visit that site or have that connection, you still have some information that's stored on there temporarily for a while. So if you want to really look at historically what that system is connected to, right? For example, if you're doing investigation, and I had a case a long time ago, I had to actually look at somebody's computer because he was accused of visiting pornography website when he's at work. And so we were able to find traces of that, right? Number one, through browser history, they couldn't delete that. So we disabled that option and you can also see the connectivity. And we can track to see, so there are many ways you can go to Wireshark and it gives you the timestamp on when that happens, what website was visited. So all of these things you can pull, but so it's still keep track record of your connectivity for a while, and then we can flush it out, right? So when you do this, you free up temporary storage for the system. Okay, got that? All right, next. So we can answer here that no, it's not, the output is less, right? Because you have less entry that's stored. Okay, and then what we can do is we can go back and then we can do ARP-A again. And then see, compare the first ARP-A that we see to the ones that we just did here, right? It's still going to give you some information for the connection, but ultimately it's not going to give you as many compared to the first time. Okay, and that's typical. Now, when you do this at home, your table might be very large, right? Like I tested it on my laptop yesterday to make sure everything is good for your lab. And because I was on a lot of different websites and a different connection, so my table is a lot larger. So it might not look exactly the same for every system. It's really your connectivity for the individual system. Yes. Yeah, so no, right? And then open the conversion on the phone. And then add a route to the drive. No.
Can't type it. You have to download that.
Are you guys not having a VM?
You don't have this lab yet, right? Okay. It's your sticking? Okay. Download.
Okay. So what we're gonna do is we are going to move to the next part. I know some of you are waiting. So once we verify that some of the entry is gone, right? Our cache, our temporary storage did clear. And then what we're gonna do is we are going to manually enter. So when you're using a switch S, is it done? Okay, thank you. Who needs a drive for virtual machine? Okay. You copy it to your desktop?
Where's your drive?
Well, yours is actually booted, so. Okay, so remove the drive and then get back the drive so I can use it. Okay, so when you manually statically enter your command, you need to put in the IP address here and the MAC address here. So you can practice by looking at this. See how this is static? Right? So we can try arbitrary, we can do ARP. So in order to find your IP address, simple, right? You can do IP config. And when you do IP config, it gives you a very brief summary. So here's my IP address, 10.0.2.15. Let me see if get MAC works. So copy, Veronica, copy the folder so someone else can use that drive. And if you use the command get MAC, it's gonna give me my MAC address. Understand? So if I need to manually set up my cache entry, I can do an ARP S for set or static set, right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in our IP address 10.0.2.15 space. And if you look at the instruction, it tells you to add the MAC address in following. Okay, so we will put in our MAC address here. So 08-00-27-31-3D-00. Oh, I have a typo there. So let me make sure that it's all capped. Let me see if it'll take that. So it took it, right? So if you have the proper information, you can do a set and then manually set up that ARP table. And so when we think about ARP poisoning, it's just a way that the attacker actually set up an entry for that network with the specific information for their intention, right? To be able to put in, you know, their IP address and their system MAC address. So our table stores all of that temporarily. Everybody okay with that? And so if we need to delete it, we know what to do, right? ARP-D, it's gonna clear. So now let's check. Every time that you set something, you wanted to make sure it's there. So you can do an ARP-A. And there it is, right? I see it. It's the second entry right there, and it says static. Understand? So this is, so today, what the takeaway of this is to be able to use TCP/IP utility, especially right now, is ARP, your ARP. Any questions? So whenever that you troubleshooting a system not connecting to that segment of the network, we would say that we would want to check to see its state in connection. So you can pull up the ARP table and see what kind of connection that it's established, right? Any questions? Are we okay? I know you can do this on their regular PC as a regular user, like ARP-A, but you can't delete or you cannot set without having admin privileges. Okay. Next. So here, Were you able to set the static cache? Yes, right? Take a screenshot. Then what you're gonna do, so in Linux and Windows, you can use the same command hostname. Hostname simply gives you your computer name. So now the reason why we do this is a way that we can connect to our network is also using NetBIOS or using the system name. So here what we see is we would see our system information. And so we want to be able to write that down. So once you have that information, make sure that you record that, right? Host name is your computer name, basically. Any question?
Oh, thank you.
And you're welcome to bring your laptop to class. I'm not required that you're using the computer. Sometimes that's even better because you have ways to control your system. And you can always revert your system back, right? After you configure it. But virtual machine is really good for testing and training. So. And I'm in the process of getting more drives from the college. So we'll see once, we'll probably have more drive in the next time. Okay. So we would have the system information. So another thing that I like to show students is to use path ping. So when you use path ping, I tell you right here that it's followed by, you can use a host name, you can use an IP address, and in this case, what kind of IP are we using here? What, a loopback address. Thank you. So you can use a loopback address or another IP address. And what we can do is we can actually, so if you learn ping, right, basically you're following that packet from that system to the destination. It's kind of like I'm tracking my package with UPS, right? And whenever that they scan, when it goes to a different shipping warehouses, it's gonna show like, oh, it's in Minnesota, it's in Arizona, and then eventually California, right? Path ping does that, right? But we can also do path ping, and we can follow it for a certain amount of time, and we want to do a report. So here you want to do a path ping 127.0.0.1. So we're going to do a loopback. And it's going to give you the statistic information, and it does take about a minute or so, sometimes longer. It also depends on how expanded it is, your destination, right? So it's kind of like tracking from California to New York. Sometimes there's like 25 shipping warehouses in between, or sometimes there's only 2. So in the case of your destination is a little bit farther. And the cool thing about path ping is it does give you the statistic information. Okay, I'm going to show you the ping now. I know it's not on the instruction until later, but if we do a loop back on the regular ping, you would only see, right, how it tracks the packet. So it sends out 4 requests and it's receiving 4 replies. But this is not always the case. Sometimes server would only respond 50%. So ping is a good way for us to check to see if the system is connected.
Just go to the box for the IP address.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so path ping gives you more detail and then the statistic information. Okay, so how many hops were shown? So how can I tell here, right? I only have 1 hop because I am myself, right? It's kind of like tracking where your house is, right? You're saying how many houses in between? Well, I'm inside my house, so there's only 1. Okay, and then your system information. Next, we're gonna do NetBIOStat. So we are going to do NBR NBT stat-R. This allows you to see some information that's resolved by NetBIOS name. Remember, the system can resolve by name. That's the traditional way before we start using IP address. So legacy wise, that's how Windows system used to be connected, is by its name. So NBT stat -R. Oh, sorry, I had a typo. So here, what we would see is we would see that it's resolving. It shows you NetBIOS resolution and registration statistic. For the resolve broadcast, 0, resolve name server, 0, right? So when you're using name server, sometimes that it can resolve by name, like your DNS can be used or your NS can be used for name server. And your broadcast here is 5. So this is a good way for us to really see if the system is using NetBIOS for resolution. Any question? Okay, so we learned how to use NBT stat, which is for NetBIOS. Okay, so answer the questions once you see the pop-up or the output. So for me, I didn't have much of percentage, 0, 0 here, and then the registered broadcast, I only have 5 over 0. For the, so, you know, the system didn't really use the name server there.
I just wondered, it says it didn't recognize it.
So NBT stat space -R, need to type it as it's shown. All right. Any question before we go into PowerShell? Okay, so yeah. One second, let me pause. Let me re-record. Sometime I forget. All right, so we talked about how we can find suffix after step 12 when we entered this to find the version 6 IP information. So your suffix is before the double colon there. Okay. It doesn't exactly say it, but when you look at your IP address, you should see it. So now every time you look at the IP version 6, you would know what the suffix is. Okay, then what we're going to do next is we are going to attempt 13. We're going to look at the reachable state when we already talked about stale before. So let me shrink this down and then come back here. So we are going to do a get net neighbor again, same command, and then we are going to do a state space reachable. Yeah, make sure we spell it right. And then you're going to do a pipe again. So a pipe allows us to combine the command, and then we are going to do a get. And you guys should know this, net adapter. We already did this last week. Oops. Sorry, I didn't complete that. I accidentally pressed enter, so adapter. So what this does is we are getting the entry that shows reachable in the ARC table. And also we want to show the adapter information, right? Which is your network adapter information. So when you're using a pipe, you're able to combine 2 commands in one line instead of executing it separately. And that is helpful when you pull data information to be able to show. Okay, so when we expand this, oops, you can see it shows that this is my interface, it's up, right? Some MAC address information, my Ethernet information. So it is reachable. It's not stale. Yeah. What are you doing?
Trying to reach from whoa. More red.
Yeah, if you don't have a repeatable state, it's not gonna happen. So look at your state. If your state earlier doesn't have any repeatable, or it's so permanent, you can set your, yeah, that's another way.
I mean, it shows.
If it doesn't show it, then
Yeah.
So, a failed state is, like, for example, when I did. No, it's a normal, you pick something wrong. That's in the page. Yeah.
So it makes us go back more.
Yeah. Now you have to try to. So when I close the tab again, or, yeah, everything. Then it becomes under your, after that. Or because the new information. Then. You wouldn't be put through. I mean, you can go and
Separate. I'm gonna check an alternate thing. That's permanent. Gave red, but it also still gave you stuff. No. RM. Yeah. No. Permanent. Permanent.
Yeah, so applicable. Yeah, it's only gonna list some. The reachable one. So go, just run, get at the back here, I mean, get that info.
It's the same command, it should just sub that right out.
I'm like, copy this, so I don't have to.
Oh. I pressed up, so you have like 10 commands that are saved, and then all you have to do is press up and down, and we'll go through them. I just pressed up, but now you can go.
You know,
And, yeah, just delete everything, delete that part and then change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, because you're.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Yep.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Why these permanent and over stuff like. You know what? Remote, but you know why it's permanent and no resident? So now, TCP, so you can actually open up the website and connect to other systems like or the connect to others. So, for example, like, if I open a site and but it's still listed. You still have to change that. So that way, all the connections. That's what but it does still. Yes. Because it's not connected. So if you look at the IP address, that's part of it. So it doesn't always, so always check.
I'm waiting.
It's kind of like this. It doesn't say.
Well,
It
the only issue,
doesn't deliver
if
everything.
you type in the wrong letter.
No, and
Or done.
becomes available for other people. Come back to you later, it might be. So systems don't always stay, and around it. All the one.
I've been snacking this whole time.
So if it's say directly one to one connected, then we have to have. Yeah, and I think the point is trying to that if it's connecting, and you can do that, check your wireless router, so you can also see your neighbor, also give everybody. Yeah, so right now, 3 is the college only. Okay, are we okay? All right, so 13, we're good. Now we're gonna move to UDP and TCP. So TCP is connection oriented. That means that it has to establish connection in order to transmit. And UDP is kind of like throw your package to your front door and leave and don't care for signature. So doesn't need any kind of confirmation. It's connectionless. So I mentioned some of the benefits for UDP compared to TCP here. So what we're going to do is we are going to take a look at some of the connection state. And this is a little bit different than what you saw earlier. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a get net TCP. So if you want to look at TCP connection only, you would do that. You would do the command get net TCP connection. And it's going to list all the TCP connection, right? So approximate is okay. Now, if you do this on a certain system in the network, you're going to get hundreds, right? I'm not going to deduct points if you miscounted, okay? So I just want you to have an idea of what's happening when you do that command. It's going to list your addresses, your port, right? So the local port, how it's connecting from and to, and 443.80 is HTTP, 443 is HTTPS, right? And then we have some specified port, and then also the server's app address, okay? Then what you're gonna do is, if you look, if there's anything that shows, I don't think it shows the close wait state. If it shows that if you don't have any, you can put 0. Right? So on the next one, we're gonna look at the state to see the established. That means established just means that it's connected. Okay. Sorry, let me do this so we can see it together. Yeah, if you don't have that state, it's not gonna show. So I have some established state on my system. So if you have established state, then it's gonna show. If not, right, it might throw an error. If you mistype established, it's also throw an error. So make sure that you type it correctly. So whenever that I connect to a website, for example, and authenticate, it would list it. So you can see that in the ARC. Our table is really powerful, right? If you study long enough, you know exactly how the systems are connected. Yeah. Well, just compare. So answer the question. It says compare, are there less entry listed? Yeah, right? Because the other lists everything, and this lists only the established connection, the connected, right? The communicated entries. All right. Some of you are stuck on the owning process when I'm getting there. So 2 more, a few more, and then we're done. Okay. So next we're gonna do applied setting internet. We're gonna seek for internet connection using TCP, right? So this is when you, like the type of connection for internet such as when I log in to pay my bill, filling out FAFSA, etc., right? That is a full established connection for that session. So what we're gonna do is we are going to do a get -net TCP connection. Oops. I should just up arrow and change, right? Apply setting space in internet.
RVM don't have internet connection, so it's.
Yeah, so if you don't have that, then because if you change your static IP, if you're using 172, likely you don't have internet connection.
Yeah.
So if you get an error here, it's because you're using static IP or something that you don't have connection to. So that's okay.
Should we just put using static IP?
Mhm. So on this, it shows that I'm connecting to these, right? HTTP, HTTPS. And if you're using static IP, like you're using a virtual machine that has static IP, you likely don't have internet connection. So you don't have, if you would say 0, right? 0 here, and then write down 3 commonly owning process. So you can just put none there. Yeah, just ignore B. I think they removed that in the applied setting option. You can only see the ports actually with this command. And then now you can also try to enter some processes. So let me see if we can use a wildcard and see if. Let's try using a wildcard. Owning process. Oops, sorry, I have a capital R. That should not be. Yeah, it's not gonna pull up for this one. You have to know the exact process. Cannot convert value. Invalid data category. Yeah, so I think they removed this actually for the PID. So don't have to do 17. We can skip that one. Okay. Bless you. Almost done. Yeah, 17 we don't have to do. Then we're gonna do UDP now. So UDP get dash net UDP endpoint. So the endpoints are the systems that is used in the communication for UDP. It's kind of like the address that they threw the package in front of the door, right? So you would see, so this is a way that you can list UDP compared to TCP. We would use TCP connection because it's connection oriented. UDP, you would use endpoint for PowerShell, okay? So you would see the connectivity for UDP. So the ports that are associated with the IP, you're gonna see specific, you can list some of the ports that you find here. Okay. Remember we talk about ports tied to services. They're kind of like the windows or a way to be able to establish the service for the system. And then what we're gonna do is we are going to look at the things that would be loopback on UDP. So we're gonna continue up arrow key, and then we're gonna do local address 127.0.0.1. Okay, so when we get here, we would see the loopback address and its associated local port. So I only have 3. You might have more, but usually you see a few there for 19. It's good that I cut this in half, right? Otherwise we'll be. Some students before in the others last year, they said, this is a lot of typing. I said, the nature of this is a lot of time you have to use command. So we have not as much as coding, of course, right? But not too bad. So we looked at endpoint. Now we're going to switch gear and we're going to look at net UDP setting. And this is going to be looking at the setting for the actual system. Okay, so we're going to do setting instead. And so setting, which just gives you the port information like dynamic port range, and it's going to show you the port information. Compared to when you're using the net UDP endpoint, endpoint is more of the listing for UDP connection, where if you use setting, it's only going to show port range information. And it's typical for UDP to use a higher port value compared to what you see with TCP, but it also depends on the type of service that's being used by that system as well. Okay. So I encourage you to practice PowerShell. It's one of those things that if you administer Windows, that's very useful. PowerShell is a powerful tool, and it's some of the things that employers look for when they hire, especially security and IT people. Any question? All right. So earlier we saw that we use path ping And packing is part of ICMP speak. So anytime that you use ping, you're using ICMP. Now, some admin that they would disable this because sometimes, there are attacks that you can ping a server to death because every time you ping, it has to respond. It's kind of like, you're in a car with a kid and they ask you, are you there? And if you don't answer, you have to answer, right? You're gonna say, yes, I'm here. And they just keep asking. So every time that the child asks, right, the parent or the adult has to answer. And ICMP requires the request, you would see the traffic for the request and the response. And so what you would see is that sometimes this service is disabled, right? So in PowerShell, we are going to use the test connection and we're going to do a loopback, which is our own system, our local host. So test connection, and we're going to do the loopback address. So what this does is it's going to send, right, the echo request, same like ping, just like ping, packets to the system. So the destination address, we are pinging ourselves. So in PowerShell, instead of using ping, you can use test connection like this. So this is really good for troubleshooting for the system that is suspected to be down, like your server. So you can do a test connection and then the server IP address. And if you see response, right, then that means that it's alive. Okay. Yep. You can also ping, of course. That's the easiest. And so here I put down that you can also add in certain type of parameters. So it would tell you what's the source, which is my computer. The destination is my loopback address, right? And then it tells you the bytes. So that means that it sends, right, 32 bytes. And as you notice, it does 4 times because Windows sends 4 packets, 4 requests, and it expects 4 reply. Just like when we do ping in command prompt, we see that it reply 4 times, right? Sometimes it doesn't always reply. If it's not connected fully, you would get like, it will reply 2 out of 4 or 1 out of 4. But it does send 4 requests. It's like the kid asking, are you there? Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? 4 times, right? And then the parents or the adult has to respond 4 times. I'm here, I'm here, here, I'm here, right? So it's a way that we can check the connectivity of that system, test connection. So next we are going to look for our host name again, and you're going to plug it in for 23. Okay. Don't type this in. Make sure you take the name of your system and put it into the red part. Because if you do this exactly, it's going to throw an error. So. All right. So we're going to find our host name information. And so my host name is desktop dash blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to do a test. So you can test connection with the name. You got to type it as is.
Is the CN connection supposed to be capital or?
Yeah.
Yeah. I must have had a typo there. Amazing. Laggy.
You have to type over here.
So it makes you appreciate shorter computer name for sure. When you have to type, right? So you can do the same thing, right? You notice that we get the same result. We send 4 requests, it responds 4 times by the name or by the IP address. And you can try your neighbor's IP address. You can also use the IP address. So I can do the same thing, right? With a real IP address, like 10.0.0.2, for example. And if it's alive, then it's gonna, right? So it tells me that it failed.
RP server. Timeline system.
Okay.
Same thing, so just. It also go up.
So that's not a real, so let's try that.
Oh. You're forgetting the hyphen.
0215.
Okay, so 7. Do I space after the hyphen?
No.
So 7, NG, and 8, T5, right?
Yeah, those are all capital.
Okay, so that concludes. So when you compare the result, it's basically the same, but it's just outputting with the host name, right? It's still gonna ping 4 times, or it's gonna send 4 requests and it's gonna receive 4 reply. So when you come back to the first part here, right, you see when you do it with the loopback, it just show the loopback address as a destination. And then when you do it with the desktop name or the host name, it just show the destination as the name. That's the main difference. But it's able to do both. Not so bad. So I'll give you some time for those of you who were catching up from earlier. You should still be able to finish. Okay, let me stop recording.